Hello, everyone. Sarah Barker with the Connect Our Elders Empowering Aging podcast. I have an incredibly special guest here for you today, Gabrielle Pumpian, and she'll share with you her background and who she works for. But what I personally know about Gabrielle is that she is incredibly well respected in the San Diego community of being a home care professional that operates from an advisor level, which I just absolutely love. So, Gabrielle, thank you so much for being with me today.
My pleasure, Sarah. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. All right. Well, let's get into it then. I've already shared your name with the audience, but let's talk about who you are, your background, how you got into the senior care industry, who you work for now, of course, but what is your why? Why are you serving seniors and why have you continued to serve seniors for years now?
Yeah, great. Well, first off, I'm a woman. I'm a sandwich generation caregiver, which we can get into that term a little bit. I'm a daughter, I'm a mother, I'm a wife, I'm a friend, I'm a colleague, and I'm genuinely a person that cares about her community, everyone from children all the way to our aging seniors.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And before you got into the home care space, if I'm remembering accurately, you worked for Mission Healthcare. So were you on the home care side or did you transition from home health to home care?
Yeah, so a little bit of background. I always worked in the customer service industry, mostly in restaurants since the age of 16. So from a young age, I developed a pretty strong work ethic and also went around doing something that I love. After moving to San Diego after graduating college, I got a job at the front desk of a hospital at the neuro rehab center. So I was learning healthcare. I really had no idea kind of what I was getting into, but as I was working the front desk of this inpatient, outpatient rehab center, I was learning about the clinicians that help people get better and hopefully, go home. I learned how vendors come in and sell different services and products to support the staff within the hospital to give resources to the community when they discharge home. And so my brain kind of like lit up to, wow, this is an actual career opportunity in a lot of different ways to work in the healthcare industry. And while I was working there, I was introduced to home health and home care by people coming in again and kind of meeting with case managers. And someone said, hey, have you ever thought of doing sales? I work for this company that has a private home care division, and I think you'd be a great candidate. So I applied, and 15 years later, here I am. At Mission, I did work as a salesperson for their home care division and then moved into an operations role where I was actually director of operations for 3 counties in Southern California. So now I got to have that experience of what it takes to hire, train, retain, understanding the labor force, the labor laws, understanding what it takes to run a very successful home care business and all the pieces of the machine that it takes. So from that experience, I felt like I became even more well-rounded in the industry and in the business itself.
100%, because you can't have one without the other, right? I mean, if you have a really phenomenal salesperson, but the operations is not intact, well, how do you complete that delivery of service?
Correct.
Right? But if the service delivery isn't going so well, then your salesperson is probably going to stop receiving referrals. So it is so hand in hand.
Yeah. And it really gave me an insight into who the caregivers are that we were hiring to provide this service that I was saying is going to be the best thing you could, spend your money on. And I think it really finally gave me this perspective of who caregivers are in society, in our country, in San Diego County, the really hard work that they do and the skilled care that they provide. My husband is a nurse, so I understand like the clinical perspective, but caregivers often get kind of categorized as unskilled. And I firmly believe that that's inaccurate. You can know the difference between a really good caregiver and a not so skilled caregiver.
I love the fact that you just said that, because often on the non-medical home care side, we will say that it's unskilled care. But really what we should be saying is that it's a different skill set.
Correct. And it's often the most important skill set, right? Clinicians, they provide support for only so long. But when people hire non-medical caregiving, it's to replace or create, a family member type approach to helping that loved one heal or recover or just live sustainably in their home or pass away in a dignified way. And so I think it's really, for me, I want to shift that kind of narrative approach to what, non-medical unskilled labor and these caregivers are. They're the most important people in our society. So that's why I'm very passionate about what I do.
They are, and it's not an easy job many times, right? And, we can get deeper into this, but aside from the care that's being delivered, what about the fact that having that caregiver and the delivery of care and the other tasks they do around the home, we often don't talk about how in a lot of ways we're preserving relationships in the family.
Absolutely. So, like I said at the beginning, I'm a sandwich generation caregiver. I have a young daughter and I have aging parents. Both of my parents have chronic illnesses, and I live 800 miles away, and I'm an only child. Wow. So I have heavily relied on my knowledge in the industry and the resources I have where they live and kind of how to vet to help them create a sustainable living experience. And we have caregivers in the home, but it kind of stems, and just to kind of diverge a little bit, but I'm very passionate about helping families have some hard conversations so that they can be prepared for the future. So a few years ago, my parents came to visit me before they were diagnosed with their illness. And being an only child, having a young daughter, I kind of had a tough conversation and said, are you ready to age? Do you have the financial support? What are my expectations of you? Because I don't plan on moving back to where, I grew up and where you live. And it opened up, this kind of, it burst a bubble really of what they didn't have planned. And me saying, okay, since you don't have these things, let's get you some good resources. I have this amazing community of trusted advisors in San Diego that I would recommend you talk to. And so long story short, they were very open, which I'm so grateful for, because I know not everybody has that experience of their parents being open-minded to your child's suggestions. And my mom was able to qualify for a long-term care insurance / life insurance policy. And I'm not kidding. 6 months later, she was diagnosed with cancer. And that policy came in extremely handy and has been a godsend to our family, getting her support that she needs that is paid for by this policy.
I bet. I'm so sorry to hear about your mom.
That's okay.
But kudos to you for having the courage to proactively have that conversation. So perhaps you could share with the audience the difference. So by the time a family makes their way to you or makes their way to me or anybody in this industry, what are the differences you see serving the families who have done some proactive conversations, discussions, research, right, into resources versus a family comes to you in absolute crisis?
Right. So those are definitely the two kind of common scenarios. The crisis is usually people making decisions without having the opportunity to be educated, or at least to vet or, explore their options. They're being discharged out of a hospital, they need to hire in help, or they need to go to a facility, and they're kind of just being ushered and pushed. Whereas someone who may be anticipating or has been recently freshly diagnosed with a situation that they know they're going to need more help for, and they also know that their spouse or their family are not 100% going to be able to do it all, because let's be frank, it takes a village. You can't expect to do it all for your loved one. Those people often take a little bit longer maybe to make a decision, but at least they're able to gather the resources, get the opinions, cross compare pricing, scenarios. And then, usually their decisions are just more informed, and so that they last longer, or at least in their process, they've built trust, or they've, they now have more kind of tools in their tool belt than just, case managers telling me to do this, I got to do this so I can get out of the hospital or something like that.
Right. And they're not understanding yet even what's the difference between home health and home care. And maybe even the physician has said, home care, but it was actually home health. And so then by the time they get to us, there's confusion because they think that the home care is going to be paid for by traditional insurance, all of those things. So
and it's more stressful. It's already stressful, right? But that creates more stress that can create a higher instance of, injury or difficulty for the well spouse or the child. Help to avoid the adult child from having to like quit their job or sacrifice their lifestyle, which kind of was an example that I gave about my own family, that I wasn't in this place. I'm not in a place to move away from my home here. So getting help in has been really, really great. And I think it just starts with having those conversations early. And if you aren't comfortable to do that with your parent, that's fine. There are so many great resources, as you've done such a great job, Sarah, of kind of showcasing in San Diego and around the country to have people help you facilitate those conversations. Like, we are not here to do this alone by any means.
We're not. And I want to, put that back to you, which is, I want to share with the audience, even if you don't have an immediate need right now for caregiving services, what I know of Gabrielle, reach out to her, right? Because that's the approach, which is you're more than happy to just have a conversation, provide some education and navigation, even if the need isn't immediate. So that way, at least there's a trust building and you're allowing them to kind of go into this next phase of life with eyes wide open.
Absolutely. What I have kind of told other sales folks who've gotten into this career, that home care is a long game. And it is something that I talk to my customers and families sometimes 1 to 3 to 6 to 9 a year, of these months that go by without just continuing to support and educate. And then when that time comes, the family's making a decision again that's informed, it's sound, they feel good about it. We even allow our clients or potential clients to have the paperwork signed and kind of on reserve here, on retainer, essentially. We don't ask for any money up front, but we want to make sure people feel like they can give us a call and give us that green light to staff them with caregivers, even if they, aren't ready when they send the paperwork back to us after we have an initial conversation.
I'm loving the fact that you guys do that. And it's an unfortunate truth. And this is what I advise marketers. You need to continue to follow up with the family, even if they say not right now. Right. The unfortunate truth is, yes, they probably do need the support, but they're not feeling the pain enough yet. But if they're developing a relationship and you continue to stay in touch and offer the education that you're describing, when something happens, the mechanics of it is already put in place. They already have the person that they can contact, that they've built a trust with. So it's great that you guys are able to do that. So taking all your experience, your personal situation, your prior history in the industry, you're with a new agency now. It's been, 6 months, maybe?
No, it's been about 3.5, 4 months.
Oh my gosh, it feels like it's been so much longer than that because you guys are growing. It's so exciting to see the stuff. Okay, so everything, your personal and your professional history, how has that landed you in your position with the new agency? And I'm going to go ahead and let you share the name of the agency and talk about what led to this and what are the differentiators that you guys have.
Yeah, thank you. So I have worked for larger home care companies in San Diego for the last almost 15 years. And I've found that to do home care really well for customers and families to get the value out of the very high cost of the service, I believe that comes from each client having a relationship with the office. Each team member in the office can answer the phone and know who they're talking to on the other line. And that comes from a really hyper-local operation. So one of the things that I found challenging with a larger company was that things, just like a lot of corporations, things become outsourced. It's a cost-saving mechanism. It's a volume, approach, how to handle that kind of volume. And that works for some. But after some time, I found that, I was not kind of being authentic and true to my customers, saying you're going to get this experience when they weren't, in a lot of senses. And then also on the flip side with our staff. So it's our caregivers building rapport with the entire team in the office. That's hard to do when you have a 25-person regional team that they're calling, asking for work or having an issue, and they're talking to somebody who doesn't know them. And in this industry, caregivers can work wherever they want. And
Oh,
so
for sure.
we spend a lot of time and money and energy hiring them. We want to retain them. We're choosing them to work for our company for a reason. So all that's to being said, Cheer Home Care, which is a very positive name, was born in July, and our team of 6 internal staff, and already we have about 55 caregivers.
Wow.
We really take that hyper-local approach. Everyone is involved in the hiring. Everyone is involved in the orientation. Each caregiver learns the story of the business. And so we're trying to build a company here that isn't supposed to be the biggest in the country or even in the county, but really reflects authenticity, integrity, dignity, and a local operation where our customers, who often, privacy is very important to them, making sure that their information is not shared between hundreds of people, that the billing is accurate, all of these little things that make the experience valuable. Again, the very high cost of the service is what we're doing here.
Concierge. So a lot of people will say, oh, we provide a concierge level of service, but then you have to take a step back and ask, how is it that you're operating to support the fact that you're saying it's a concierge service? So that's what I'm hearing you say, is that we are saying we provide this level of service, but you've actually put into place processes that ensure that it's concierge level.
Exactly. And the model that I think really does this well, which I've had with other companies, but again, it's kind of that small quality feel here, is having client care managers, or client case managers, as we call them, a part of the service. So there's some companies out there that have like geriatric care management on the side that they can offer their customers for an additional fee. We don't offer that kind of holistic geriatric care management. What we offer is management of the caregiving service. So our care managers go out, they meet with the clients in their home, they do a thorough assessment, they get to know them, they build that trust and rapport, and then they come back and work with the staffing manager to find a team or caregiver to work the client. And then they go back out and introduce that caregiver in person at the first shift. And if there's a replacement caregiver, they're also there introducing the caregiver and orienting them. And even that little step takes the burden of opening the door to a stranger off of the primary caregiver in the home, usually the spouse or an adult child, and allows our service to really give that primary caregiver a break if there is one in the home.
It does.
That's what helps decrease the burnout and help people foster their relationships as wife and husband, as daughter and mother, so that they can kind of maintain and sustain a healthy relationship.
It is so true. And, I'm not afraid to talk about things that are uncomfortable that need to be spoken about, which is, you could have the best marriage and now all of a sudden you are being the family caregiver and you love your spouse and you feel this sense of obligation that you need to do all of this. Well, over the course of time, it's really hard not to start to feel those feelings of resentment because you get tired, burnt out, all of that. And that's where, having professional care really, really diminishes that from happening, right? And that's what I mean by we help to maintain, as you said, healthy relationships within the family. So let's spend a little bit more time on how you have the care managers introduce the caregiver, but then if there is a change, another caregiver. We have often talked about in the industry, we understand it's uncomfortable for the care recipient, the client, to have somebody, really a stranger, come into their home. But let's look at the other side of that. You could have the most professional caregiver that's been doing it for years. It's still a bit awkward when you're walking into a home and you don't know this person. But if the care manager did the assessment and it's a warm transfer, there's this implied trust, right, through that.
Right. It's like you can compare it to any other industry where you're walking into a meeting to give a presentation and you don't know your audience, right? You're probably going to be more successful if you've done a little bit of research, you know who you're speaking to, you know their backgrounds, maybe you know some things of how the information will be received. Same thing with caregiving. And again, it goes back to empowering our caregivers to be professionals, that they're not just showing up as a warm body in a home with a uniform on to say, I'm here to do your dishes, or I'm here to help you with a shower. So it is really important to make sure that the caregivers feel comfortable. Our care managers have a phone call with the caregiver when they accept the shift from the staffing manager and go through the plan of care before they come out to the home, and then they're introducing in the home. So again, it's like
full brief. It's a full, in the military, we call it a mission brief. You can't expect for somebody to go and meet expectations if the expectations have not been fully conveyed. And I know, right, of course, you can put everything in the agency management software, right, that says, here's your tasks. But that doesn't really convey the nuances of the situation to fully prepare the care professional.
Exactly, because everybody's different and we're all human. So if somebody needs help with bathing, if your mom needs help with bathing, that's going to look differently from my mom's needing of assistance with bathing. And so just expecting these caregivers, and a lot of them have done caregiving for a long time, but that doesn't mean that they can just walk into a situation and just be perfect. And again, it comes down to value, right? And I know you've had a lot of conversations around finances in this industry and how expensive things are and how important it is to save and to plan for the true cost of aging, because it is very expensive. And so when you're willing to spend money on a service or a product, you really want to get the value out of it. But if you were to go and buy a car, you'd probably do a little bit of research around that product before you just invest in it. Same thing with caregiving. It could be the cost of a new car every month receiving 24/7 care. Like, it's a lot of money.
It could be. And, maybe we should talk a little bit about that, right? Because, working with agencies across the US, one of the barriers that the people I work with face is, well, they said we're too expensive, so they're going to go with this other agency. And my response is, are you prepared to explain why your cost is what it is? And if they want to try the other agency, okay, that's fine. But it's like most things in life, you get what you pay for.
Right. And I think that was one of the biggest reasons why I feel and I felt like making a change from a larger company to a smaller one was going to give more value to, my job, which is selling and business development. And we just have a lot more control. My CEO, she ran a very successful home care company in Boston for over a decade and decided to sell it and move out here to San Diego with her family. And one of the things that I loved about our first few conversations was our alignment around, quality over quantity. And then really quality, not only for the customer, but quality of life and employment for the caregiver. We are in such a precarious situation in this country because we don't have enough people to care for our aging population. And so at some point, you're going to have to invest in care either for yourself or your aging parents. And there's a lot of options out there, right? And so we want to be a really good option. We're not for everybody, we know that. But for those customers that do kind of align with what we're offering, we want to be the best.
It's the values. And I really like your emphasis on the care professionals, because in our industry, as we should, right? We're always talking about the dignity of the clients, preserving their dignity. But again, how it's so connected. How can we be so focused on that, but yet not be concerned about the dignity of the care professionals? What it needs to be is we are equally focused on the dignity of both of those facets, because they're both people.
Exactly. And our country doesn't have a safety net built to help support care professionals. So, if you have a baby and your main job is a caregiver or a nurse, you're only going to get X amount of time off before you have to go back to work. And who's going to raise your baby? Now you're looking for childcare. And so many of our caregivers are also the sandwich generation, not for their own parents, but as their profession. And so we really have to, we could do a whole nother podcast.
I know, we could, and we can.
This topic, but I'm very passionate about it because I think it's not talked about enough. And I think that there's not enough paid family leave in this country. There's not minimum wage is what most care workers make. Like, who can sustain on under $30,000 a year
Certainly
providing
not
for
in
their
San
family?
Diego.
But those are the people that we're expecting to be this, perfect caregiver for our loved ones.
And doing hard work too. I've done some
Work.
caregiving shifts before. It was uncomfortable and it
It's
wasn't
very
nice.
uncomfortable. It's emotionally and physically and spiritually very draining. And so I firmly believe, and we have a very unique system here at Cheer, where we're not just paying caregivers the minimum wage, and we're also not. And, this is just highlight kind of an industry knowledge, or I don't know what I want to call it, but a lot of times caregivers get paid based on what the client's bill rate is, right?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe if a client needs a higher level because they have a very complex situation, they require transfer skills, or they have advanced dementia, maybe with behavioral concerns, you're probably going to charge a little bit more to that client so that you can pay a caregiver a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
To commit to the shift. Well, at Cheer, we're really paying caregivers based on their merit, based on their experience, and based on the credentials that they've acquired over their lifetime, or if they're students. So we're paying way above industry standard, and we're paying caregivers because of who they are and the time and energy they've invested in themselves.
Just like how it is in any other profession.
How it is in any other profession.
Yeah, I didn't know that about you guys, so I'm glad that you shared that. I didn't know that was one of the differentiators, but that's phenomenal.
And those little things, in my opinion, are how we start changing the system, and how we draw more people to come into this profession to take care of us and our aging loved ones
to fix the bigger issue that we're facing in the future, which is this silver tsunami that everybody's been talking about for years, but what a lot of people don't understand, the tsunami's not even actually here yet.
No.
Right.
And what solutions, we can talk about it, but like, what solutions are businesses actually creating to address the issues?
Well, I feel like the big companies, or even these smaller sized companies, somehow integrating into their employee assistance plans some access to senior care options, right? Because we know the stats, the data shows that when an adult professional is in that sandwich generation, right, it affects their productivity, and they don't take promotions because they just don't have the bandwidth. So I've been thinking about this for years now, that it would actually behoove these corporations to somehow figure out how to incorporate somebody like Cheer into their employee assistance program.
Yeah, no, there's a few insurance. There's an insurance company, I think it's called Elevate Health, and they are doing just that. Like, they're creating insurance benefits for companies that include things that help sustain the employee long term. Mm-hmm. I also think, work-life balance, or letting caregivers take time off and get paid for it outside of just the 3 days a year of sick pay, which is also an industry standard. Most companies don't offer PTO because it's expensive, right?
Mm-hmm.
But again, like, would you take a job that didn't offer PTO?
No,
I wouldn't.
No. I do know some agencies, and I'm not sure if you guys are already doing this or considering it, but bereavement time for a care professional that's been with a client, even though the relationship that's cultivated is professional, right? There's certain boundaries that a care professional doesn't go past, right, in their role. But let's not be mistaken about this. If they're with a client, they do develop like an attachment. It's another human being. So when that client passes away, should they not have some paid bereavement time, even if it's a day or two, to kind of collect themselves, attend the funeral, whatever the case may be?
Absolutely. It's so important.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a lot of work to be done. But again, Cheer, we're trying to create kind of a new and innovative way that works well for customers and really the business, right? We're not a nonprofit, we're a profitable business. So we want to also make sure that my job is to bring in the right types of clients and families that want to age in place long term. I think that There are companies out there that do a good job kind of being like a couple day or a 3-day support for someone who's maybe just needing to get home, recovering from a surgery. But our model is really to be a long-term solution, support the adult children that live out of state or out of town, so that they don't have to pack up their life and move in with their family, their aging parent, and the aging parent can stay in their home that they want to die in and not have to move into a facility setting. And then also, for supporting caregivers with long-term work, that's another thing. It's a revolving door often. Like these caregivers, we can't say we can guarantee you 40 hours a week. And so finding clients that want to have care ongoing and maybe have a long-term care insurance policy that helps make it financially sustainable for them to have care ongoing is really the type of customer that I'm out there looking for, and partnering with certain professionals that can be a referral to.
I'm glad that you shared that, Gabrielle, because caregivers have to pay their bills and they have to feed their children. And so it can be very stressful if it's, okay, you've got 4 days of care. Oh, well, not anymore. We have to find another client for you, right? Or they're driving all over the county. So having those long-term clients for the client, right? Continuity of care.
Right. It's best.
And then you guys will have loyal care professionals because of providing the consistent work for them. So it's beneficial the way that you guys have your model set up anyway, any way that we look at it. And you made a comment about, yes, you guys are a for-profit business. So I find myself often explaining this. You have to be, because if you don't look at it as the business that it is and make strong business decisions, well, then you run the risk of going out of business and then you won't be helping anybody. So there is nothing wrong with recognizing that it's a business.
Yeah, absolutely. And, part of my job is to make sure I have a really robust box or, subset of resources that can help people if we're not the right fit for them. So there's some amazing organizations in San Diego, Southern Caregiver Resource Center. I know some companies now have switched their model from private pay to this Cal-AIM program where, it's a kind of a stopgap for the Medi-Cal program to get care. So there's a lot out there. I think we're really lucky in San Diego to have such a robust network of aging and senior care support, as well as, helping people prepare to have decision making and decision makers, legally chosen in advance of the potential for a cognitive impairment or decline, where then they don't have those decisions and then they're conserved, or they have to find a fiduciary, and which is great, but also not like an ideal situation, right? So I've learned a lot. I've joined organizations like the Professional Fiduciary Association of California, the Aging and Life Care Association, to really educate myself so I can educate my community around the types of resources that are out there for planning. Estate planning attorneys are really important. People think that you need to have like $1 million in assets to have an estate plan. That's completely inaccurate.
It is. So that's a great segue.
Okay.
Which is how you operate as a senior care professional. Yes, your technical role is business development sales, right?
Right.
But you operate as a professional, a senior care professional, an advisor. So could you share with the audience your philosophy around that and how you go about executing on that philosophy?
Yeah. So I see myself as a connector, an advisor, a connector. When I'm advising or I'm listening to someone's needs or challenges, I'm constantly thinking about who outside of myself can help this person. And so over the last probably 8 years, I've really shifted my focus in my sales and marketing from the healthcare realm, like hospitals and facilities, to this trusted advisor realm, which encompasses attorneys, financial planners, CPAs, insurance folks, long-term care advocates, all kinds of realtors, bankers. I mean, everyone knows somebody that is aging and is going to need help. Exactly. So there's really no cap on who you should be networking with. It's really, though, just creating a network, which I've done through a monthly networking group that I've hosted for the last probably 5 years. which is comprised of all those types of people I just mentioned, including hospice and home health partners, senior living community directors, anyone who is interested in learning more about a specific topic, which we talk about every single month. For example, this month, the topic that I chose, which is kind of a heavy one, but an important one in my opinion, is California's End of Life Act and the Medical Aid in Dying program. Again, I'm all about people having choice and being educated and prepared. This is a tool we have in California that doesn't exist in every state in the union. People should know about it. And so we talk about it. I pull up statistics and facts, and then we have a conversation comprised of all these professionals to see how they weigh in on the subject. So
I love this. And I hope many of my consulting clients are listening right now, because how often do I tell you guys, it's not just about calling on the hospitals and the skilled nursing facilities, right? It is about surrounding yourself, of course, with the healthcare professionals, but also your legal financial advisors, because all of these things, when we're serving seniors and their families, are important, right? And continuing to educate ourselves. So if you haven't quite gotten to the point where you believe me, I'm talking to my clients right now, you're hearing it from Gabrielle's mouth as well.
Well, you are a pinnacle, I must say. I kind of feel in a sense I've followed in your footsteps in some of these channels, because as I've explored outside of the healthcare realm, everyone knows you because you, yeah, it's great. You know, this Provisors Network, that is a national organization of vetted professionals. We are rarities in these organizations because there's not a lot of healthcare people in them. But yet we get great referrals because you build that trust, rapport, and everyone knows someone that needs a resource.
They do. That's what I say. Everybody has parents, grandparents, friends with parents. They have clients. Exactly. None of us are going to escape the aging journey.
No, I don't know how, you know, and again, I'm hoping that with more of these types of conversations, we start to break down the biases and, you know, the stigma around aging. Because if you're dealing with these things, you know, when your loved one's older and already in a difficult situation, it's going to be 10 times harder. And I think having initially a financial conversation is a good place to start. And it's not that, you know, you need access to all your parents' accounts, but you need to make sure they're having a planning conversation with a financial planner around what if they live to 99? You know, 99 is the new 89. And then when we're older, it's going to be 109. And most people are not set up financially to live that long.
No, or assets are spread out all over the place. And so there's this idea that they can't afford it when they really could afford it. There's all kinds of complexities to this. So for those listening, or when they watch this recording, because we've talked about a lot already. And so I know if it's an adult child or a spouse right now listening, they're probably like, whoa, you know, kind of overwhelmed by our conversation. So what are some specific things, whether it's the adult child, a person themselves, right, that should trigger in their mind, you know, I really should contact Gabrielle because I do think my mom is ready for some help right now?
Yeah. If it is for a senior, and you go over to your mom or dad's house and you notice the house is a little bit in disarray. Mom used to be very organized, and now, you know, you found the mayonnaise in the laundry cabinet or something like that. Those are little red flags that you want to just try to engage in a conversation around how she's feeling. You know, hygiene is a good indicator as well. Any bruising or any kind of things kind of out of sorts in the home could be from a fall or some cognitive impairment. So I think just, you know, the holidays are coming. This is often our busiest time of year because people are actually visiting their loved ones and seeing firsthand. Isolation, you know, is your parent not, you know, answering the phone anymore? Or when you talk to them, they're short conversations, or are they not seeing their best friend Betty for canasta like they used to every single Wednesday? You know, I think social isolation is one of the biggest indicators that someone is not doing very well. And one of the biggest reasons why we come in, it's not always for physical. It's really often just for companionship that we get called in to have a caregiver support them. Going out for a drive, going out into the the community, going to a play, a concert. And, COVID just wreaked havoc on our elder population. And I've noticed, even though we're like, 2-3 years out, technically, but not technically, people who have had some cognitive impairment have just escalated into isolation even further. So
it was, yeah. So I was still serving families at like a high volume then, and friends from high school that I had not talked to in years, like 20 years, contacted me and said, my grandmother was fine when we moved her into assisted living, but because of how everything shut down, there was just this expedited decline. And it all has to do, I believe it so strongly, the isolation that leads to depression that starts to manifest physically. And I think that's the aspect of caregiving that we have to remember. When I first started in the industry, it was talked about a lot, which is people's psychosocial well-being, right? But then I noticed over the years, the conversation just became centered around ADLs, right? And it needs to shift back to, yes, that is certainly a main part of what we do, but what is important to that individual that makes them feel alive? What music, what shows, what games, artwork, going through family photos, that type of stuff is so important to someone's well-being as well.
So important. Absolutely. And also having a sense of purpose is one of the biggest things I think that we lose after we retire, after maybe our spouse passes away, and having a caregiver that can come in and be proactive in a conversation, say, hey, Mrs. Jones, you used to run the Rotary Club. Like, what if we went out and went to a meeting? And you can participate, or you could just sit and listen. So finding ways to give our seniors a sense of purpose is really, really important. And that, again, will help them live independent longer, and it also helps with their sleep, and they're burning energy. And so they're going to eat better. It's just, everything is connected.
Right. Because it's quality of life. And that's exactly what we're saying, is that I just noticed this shift over the years, that quality of life became just about safety and making sure meals and cleanliness and hygiene. And it's like, no, there is so much more to the concept of quality of life. And it sounds like with you and Cheer, when the care planning process is happening, that you guys are taking the time to do that.
We do. The other part of the care manager's job is to continually offer our caregivers and our clients things to do. Just like with any relationship, sometimes things fizzle out, and you're just sitting there like, what should we do today? And that's hard. And so we want to empower our caregivers to come in and say, this week we're going to do 2 activities, or we're going to finish this puzzle, or whatever the thing is. But we're also not just relying on the caregivers, who themselves we know could be exhausted. Maybe they haven't eaten a wonderful meal that day. Maybe they're stressed out about their own family situation. And so how can we empower the caregivers to do a really good job and to feel supported while they're supporting the client in the home?
I have found the vast majority of care professionals, and this goes back years ago, they want to do a good job. They want to please the employer, but they just need to be given some direction.
Of course.
Like I compare the soldiers. A lot of the times the soldiers are not going to think on their own. So how can I be upset if they don't actually do something to my expectations when I have not explicitly communicated exactly what should be done, and sometimes how to accomplish it? It's really that simple. We do have a comment. Sorry, Justin. Justin and I actually went to military college together. So cool. He said, I heard today on our biweekly training that only 12% of financial advisors ever speak to clients about long-term care.
Yes, Justin, that's terrible. But also, I think it's because they are afraid to have the conversation too, because it's kind of could be opening up a Pandora's box and something that they're not comfortable with. But if you're a financial planner that knows someone like Sarah or myself, then you can maybe feel a little bit more confident to say, hey, today's session, or this week's or this year's session with you is going to be around retirement and aging, because you are telling me you want to retire in 2 years, and we need to come up with a plan that's going to sustain you for the next, 30. So you can still stay in your wheelhouse, but it's just bringing it up. And again, going back to my original story about my parents, their financial planner that I recommended to them, that's all she did. They didn't retain her for very long, but she was able to get them this incredible plan, this great policy, and then it has just been a lifesaver for everyone in my family.
I'm so glad you did that. Yeah, that story is moving because I had no idea that you had that going on in your family, which is tough. But again, I mean, thank God that you took the time to have that conversation.
It's a statistic, right? Like, I'm in this. It's just like, nurses who don't take care of themselves because they're just taking care of other people, and then they, burn out, or they have their own, health issues. So yeah, it's important.
So you were talking about this idea of other professionals utilizing people like you and I to talk about this lane, right? The area in which we have experience, right? And they talk about the area that they have experience in. So what sort of opportunities are you looking for? Of course, families in need of guidance, education, ready to start care now or in the future, right? So prospective clients. Let's talk about, are you looking for speaking opportunities, podcast opportunities? What types of professionals do you want to get connected with?
Yeah, I love speaking opportunities. I think being on like a panel or co-leading a conversation with a financial planner around the cost of aging. So my perspective coming in about what it actually costs and what it looks like when someone is wanting to spend the money is a great opportunity to collaborate. Also with estate planning attorneys, because often they become the person that's trying to help set up, legal decision makers for when the time comes that someone's going to need the care. Reverse mortgage specialists, really anyone who's kind of working with that population and want to have a speaker or do an educational series, either to their clients or to their teams. Like if they run a big financial planning firm and they want to educate their financial planners so that they feel more comfortable having this conversation and not be a part of that 12% statistic or whatever.
Yeah, the 12%.
Yeah. So I think that just I'm here to be a support, an educator, free speaking opportunities. We're going to try to host on a quarterly basis a speaker here in the community. Our office is located in Bird Rock, which is in between Pacific Beach and La Jolla. And we get a lot of walk-in traffic. A lot of people walk by our office. So we want to be a part of the community and not feel like people don't have access to understanding what this service is and how it can be supportive to them and their loved ones.
Yeah, so I do want to make sure that I publicly endorse Gabrielle. So I refer to this as being a subject matter expert. So for all of you who own law firms, financial advisory firms, CPA firms, even senior living communities, and anybody that just wants some more education on senior care options, right? While they're doing home care, I know that she's knowledgeable of the entire continuum of care. Right. So I do urge you to reach out to her and inquire about getting her scheduled to do some sort of educational one-time presentation, or as she said, it could be an educational series. It's definitely worth you considering that for the other advisors in your firm, but perhaps it could be a situation where you consider inviting your client base to come get educated too.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so we need to make sure we don't forget this part. So anybody that was listening to this live or they watched the recording, if they want to connect with you to have a conversation about an aging loved one, a client, or a presentation opportunity, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Yeah, so I am on LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn. So if you message me, I will respond to you same day, sometimes same hour. You can also email me to my work email, which is Gabrielle@cheerhomecare.com. You can call our office. That's another thing that I love about this team is we have a local number that's answered by a local person in my office 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And that number is 858-868-5500. And yeah, would love to meet you if you have more questions and just be a resource. Anytime.
Thank you. This was a really enjoyable podcast for me personally to have the conversation with you. And I know that lots of value was conveyed to the audiences. So I really appreciate you being a guest on the Empowering Aging podcast.
Thank you so much, Sarah. It was a pleasure. It was a really good time.
You're welcome.